Hello everyone, hope you're doing very well. I'm Steve and I'm the OET trainer from UCAN English Tutoring, one of the leading institutions that has been offering coaching on the English language tests such as IELTS, PTE, and OET examinations since 2008. We have been helping over 12,000 students to achieve their desired scores in all three different formats of the examinations. In today's video, I'm going to teach you all what the OET writing section is all about and what are the assessment factors that they are looking for in your letter. I will also give you some common mistakes that are going to be committed by students during their examinations. Let's go through the video. OET writing. Most of the students find the writing section of the OET examinations complicated, demanding, and consuming more time. But in case if you feel so, it is not true. The writing section of the OET examination is easier than you think. However, you need to know what you have to do during the examination so that you should be able to pass the test with more than what you are aiming at. Let me give you a brief overview about the OET writing examination first. OET writing examination is going to be held for about 45 minutes, including the reading time of 5 minutes. In this particular section of the OET examination, you will receive the case notes of a patient, and you need to read the case notes in 5 minutes, and then you have 40 minutes to write a letter. You need to write down this letter to a healthcare professional or the patient's relative or so on. It is recommended to write between 180 and 200 words. Let's go through the assessment criteria. First of all, before you appear in the OET examination, whether it is writing, reading, or speaking, you should know what skills they are expecting from you. It is easy for you to achieve more than what you are aiming at if you understand the expectations of the examiner from you. The OET letter is assessed against 5 assessment factors. The first one is what we call the overall task fulfillment, which includes whether the response is of the required length. The second assessment factor is the appropriateness of language, which includes the use of appropriate vocabulary and the tone in your response and whether it is organized properly or not. The third assessment factor is comprehension of stimulus, which includes whether the response shows you have understood the situation and provide relevant rather than unnecessary information to your reader. The fourth assessment factor is what we call control of linguistic features, otherwise known as grammar and cohesion. Cohesion is nothing but the way you connect the sentences together. It's going to be about how effectively you are able to communicate using a range of grammatical structures and how effectively you are able to connect those sentences together in English. The last yet important parameter of assessment is going to be the control of presentation features. It includes spelling, punctuation, and layout. It needs to be really good at. I mean, you need to know how these areas are going to affect the message you want to communicate, and you need to be really careful about them. Let's go through each parameter in detail so that you will be amazed to see what kinds of skills they are expecting so that you can achieve your desired scores. Let's go through them one by one. There are many ways to improve your skills on each criterion. Let's go through the first assessment factor. As I already told you, overall task fulfillment is the first factor and it is one of the most important parameters as well. The first and foremost thing you need to know is to see whether you are able to write a letter with the enough words. You need to write approximately 180 to 200 words in the body of the letter. This one doesn't include the addressee's details, the salutations, or the reference details of the patient, or the sign off section. Please do not write too much and do not choose the content that is irrelevant. You need to keep the required word count. However, in some cases, you may need to write down more than 200 words. So if you write up to 220 words, they are going to be taken into assessment. However, if you write more than that, for example, if you include an important case note after 220 words, they are not going to be taken into assessment. As a result, you will lose marks under overall task fulfillment. Sometimes you may have less relevant case notes, in which case you may be able to finish the letter within 160 to 170 words. That is absolutely fine as well. This 180 to 200 word limit is just a guide. Okay, let's go through the overall task fulfillment. Okay, so in this case, you have to use your own words as much as you possible instead of simply copying the words from the case notes. You need to avoid using a formulaic response if you include elements that do not fit the task. It indicates that you don't have flexibility in your writing. You should not include the information that is not clearly intended for the reader. I mean, if the reader is aware of the information that you're writing already, then it's not good. You need to ensure that the reader already knows the information and you shouldn't include that information in your letter. For example, if you have to write a letter to the patient's wife, you shouldn't include the social and medical background information because the wife already knows these information, so you shouldn't include them. All right, let's go to the second assessment parameter. This is what we call the appropriateness of language. You need to organize the information clearly in the sequence of the information. It may not be the appropriate sequence of the information for your letter based on the case notes. So you need to highlight the main purpose of your letter in the beginning, as this provides the context for the information you include. You need to be absolutely clear about the level of urgency of the communication. Always keep in mind the reason for writing. Do not just summarize the case notes provided. You need to focus on important information and minimize incidental detail. If it will help, be explicit about the organization of your letter. For example, first, I will outline the problems the patient has, then I'll make some suggestions to his treatment. Consider using dates and other time references. It's better to use these kinds of phrases in the letter. You can write, for example, 3 months later, last week, a year ago, to clear a clear sequence of events where necessary. When you have to write down these time related references, you need to ensure that you don't write down the numbers. Instead of writing number 3, it's always recommended to write down THREE, that is number in words. Remember that all professional letters are written in a relatively formal style, and so avoid informal language, slang, colloquialism, and spoken idioms unless you're sure this is appropriate. You need to understand one thing, that the speaking and writing sections are entirely different from one another in terms of the vocabulary. Speaking is considered as a semi-formal skill in OET examination. However, writing is 100% formal. which means you cannot use any informal words in your letter. For example, instead of writing down thank you, you have to use you can't use thanks a lot, but you have to use thank you. Instead of writing I want, you have to use I would like, and so on. You cannot use SMS texting abbreviations as well in your formal letter. For example, do not write you, just the letter U. Don't do that. You have to write down you, Y-O-U. That's what you have to do. Give the correct salutation. If you are told the recipient's name and title, use them. If it is Mr., just write it down Mr. You need to use the prefix correctly. Okay, that's really important. You need to show awareness of your audience by choosing appropriate words and phrases. If you're writing to another professional, you may use technical terms and possibly abbreviations. But abbreviations are not really recommended. I wouldn't recommend you to use abbreviations because if you use more abbreviations, they are going to make your letter more informal, which is not good. If you're writing to a parent or a group of lay people, use non technical terms and explain carefully. All right, let's go to the next assessment parameter, that is what we call comprehension of stimulus. You need to demonstrate in your response that you have understood the case notes fully. You need to be clear what the most relevant issues for the reader are. Do not let the main issue become hidden by including too much supporting detail. In other words, the main issue needs to be highlighted rather than the supporting detail. Show clearly the connections between information in the case notes, if these are made. However, do not add information that is not given in the case notes. For example, a suggested diagnosis, particularly if the reason for the letter is to get an expert opinion. You need to take relevant information from the case notes and transform them to fit the task set. If the stimulus material includes questions that require an answer in your response, be explicit about this. Do not hide the relevant information in a general summary of the notes provided. Let's go through the fourth parameter, control of linguistic features, grammar and connectivity. You need to show that you can use language accurately and flexibly in your writing. You need to make sure you demonstrate a range of language structures such as complex, compound, and simple. You need to split a long sentence into 2 or 3 sentences if you feel you are losing control of it. It is all right to use some kinds of sentence structures that are simple. However, it is really important that you have to show that you have good control on the use of complex and compound sentences as well. You need to review the areas of grammar to ensure you convey your intended meaning accurately. Particular areas to focus on might include the following: use of articles. For example, a, an, and the. Remember that an always goes with a phrase that starts with the vowel sound. For example, operation. A is one of the sounds created by a vowel. The second thing is countable and uncountable nouns. You need to know where you can use articles and where you should not. Some evidence is correct. An opinion is also correct. An asthma attack, yes, that's a countable noun. Yes, you're right. The third important thing under grammar is the verb forms used to indicate the past time and the relationship between events in the past and now. You need to be absolutely careful in terms of the use of tenses. For example, simple past, present perfect, and past perfect. Usually, these three tenses are frequently used in your OET letter. Next thing is adverbs that give time references. For example, 2 months previously is different from 2 months ago. The next one is prepositions. You need to use the prepositions correctly. For example, thank you very much to see is incorrect. Thank you very much for seeing. Sensitivity off, that's wrong. It's to pressure. My examination on the patient, that's wrong. My examination of the patient. Diagnosed always goes with the with, diagnosed with cancer. The next thing is to use the passive sentence structure, the passive forms. Do not write down the sentences in the active voice. It's not good because it's going to damage your letter like anything by making it more informal. Don't write he involved in an accident. He was involved in an accident. That's more better. That's much better. You need to use connecting phrases and words. That's known as connectives or connective phrases or linking phrases. You need to use them to link sentences together clearly. For example, however, therefore, subsequently, and so on. You need to be careful not to use some connecting phrases that are not recommended by the OET examiners. You cannot use moreover, so, and so on. You need to create a mental checklist of problems that you have with grammar and go through this when you review your response towards the end of the test. Particular areas to focus on might include number agreement. For example, the test results shows that there is no evidence he lives or one of the side effects. So all those things are really important. You need to ensure that whatever the sentences you're writing are complete. The main clause includes subjects and verb. For example, on examination showed that. That's wrong. It should be examinations showed that. Otherwise, on examination, it was found that. It was found that. The next thing is gender agreement. I wouldn't be surprised to see lots of students changing the gender of the patient or the addressee. For example, if it is Mr. Jones and his daughter, do not change it to Mr. Jones and her daughter. It's wrong. Or Mrs. Jones and his daughter. That's wrong as well. So you have to use Mr. Jones and his daughter. The next thing is tense agreement. You need to be able to write down the tenses correctly. Examination on 15 May 2006 revealed she is overweight. You are creating confusion over whether she is still overweight at the time of writing. So please be mindful about the way that you use the connecting phrases. The final thing is the control of presentation features, including spelling, punctuation marks, and layout. You need to take care of the placement of commas and full stops. You need to make sure that there are enough separating ideas into sentences. Also, please make sure that there are not too many keeping elements of the text meaningfully connected together. You need to leave a blank line between paragraphs and sections to show clearly the overall structure of the letter. It is critically important that you leave blank lines, please. You do not write down on every other line, as this doesn't assist the reader particularly. It makes the reader harder to understand what information you would like to convey. You need to check for spelling mistakes. Spelling mistakes are going to be one of the major problems with students writing. You need to check for spelling mistakes and for spelling consistency through your writing. For example, with the patient's name, do not misspell the patient's name again and again. Remember that many of the words you write are also in the case notes. Check that the spelling you use is the same. Be consistent in your spelling. Alternative spelling conventions, for example, American and British English, are acceptable as long as you use them consistently. Do not use symbols or abbreviations in formal letters. Remember that formal letters should not have any abbreviations. Avoid creating any negative impact on your reader through the presentation of the letter. Use a clear layout to avoid any miscommunication. Make sure poor handwriting doesn't confuse reader over spelling and meaning. You need to write legibly so the assessor can grade your response fairly using the set criteria. Okay, let's go through the common errors. What are the common errors that are committed by students? Let's go through this. One is advice. You need to be able to understand the difference between advice, ADVISE, and ADVICE. ADVISE is a verb. He was advised to take medications on time. The patient has received an advice, received advice about something. So this is a noun. CE is a noun and SE is a verb. Look at the severe. Severe means serious or acute, and it's not severe. It's not SEVER. That's wrong. Loose is an object. Do not use loose. LOSE. LOSE is a verb. LOOSE is an adjective. Loss. LOSS is a noun. And lost is a verb. LOST. That's a past verb. Or it can also form past participle as well when you use has before that. Look at this, where, WERE, for where. Instead of writing down WHERE, do not write down WERE. And then for which, do not write WICH. For planned, do not write one N only. You need to write down double N. Do not write down double L for the word until. That's wrong. Until has only one L. I hope this video is helpful to you. If you like the techniques described in the video, please do like the video and share it with your friends and family members. You can also write down the comments on the quality of my techniques. Above all, may I request you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching this video and have a wonderful day.